My name is Carol Anderson. I am the Generations Law Group Marketing Director. I will be the moderator today. Today we're talking about solo aging and how to create the village around you to help support you as you age independently. Today we have Carol Marak of Solo and Smart in Dallas, Texas, and we have Cathleen Summers, who is a registered nurse and attorney for Generations Law Group. Let's get started with Carol Marak. Carol, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and Solo and Smart?
Oh, sure. Hi, everybody. It's Carol Marak, and my website's carolmarak.com. It's pretty easy to remember if you can spell it. I'm the founder of the Elder Orphan Facebook group, and it's so good to see a few members here today. Some faces, mostly names though. But I was a family caregiver for both my parents. And this is how my recognition of the term solo aging got started for me, because once they passed, I realized, oh my gosh, who's going to do all that for me? Because I have no children, no spouse, no partner. And so I started to plan. I really created kind of a roadmap for myself, which I call the Living Well Wheel. And I looked at all of the top issues that my parents faced and what I helped them with. And that's where I started my own plan. And 7 years forward, I'm very happy, secure. I feel very safe and living independently. So I'm able to enjoy my life just because I started to look ahead and put together a plan. So thank you, Carol. Thank you, Cathleen, for having me today. I appreciate this group of people, and I'm so happy that people are interested in this topic because it's so important.
Oh, I can't agree with you more, Carol. And thank you so much for joining us. And as both Carol said, thank you all as well for joining us. We have people, I think, from all over the country, which is really kind of exciting. I am Cathleen Summers. I am a nurse attorney, and I am one of the founding partners with Generations Law Group. We really have worked in the practice to recognize, I think, the important considerations and challenges that solo agers face throughout the aging process, and with particular focus, of course, on the legal concerns for solo agers and how we make sure from a legal standpoint that they're protected. But the legal part of it is only a part of it. And as Carol and I will share with you, really kind of an approach to looking at building your village and how you can go about really taking control of your own aging process as much as possible. And this is really not a presentation for people of a specific age range. This is really for anyone in terms of looking at the aging process and how they can really grab hold of that process and take control as much as possible for themselves. Both Carol and I really do have a passion for working with individuals who are solo agers. And as we talked about, really helping them to look at this issue of creating their village. And one of the first places that we see in creating that village is really putting together a life plan, a plan for yourself. And Carol, I think you referred to that. You have your wheel that you look at, and you're going to explain a little bit more to everyone about how that works for you. But it really is all integrated in terms of putting together this life plan to help you age successfully. And really, as I said, this kind of planning is not for people of any particular age range. It really is for people of any age as we begin to take control of our own aging process and really taking a look at what we can do to impact that process successfully. Some of the things that we're going to look at are in particular the areas of your health and healthcare issues. We're going to talk about the legal and financial matters that you need to consider as well. working or looking at your work life and potential retirement concerns and issues, how lifestyle plays into successful aging, and then talk too about how social roles, housing, and community is an area to look at. And I love this quote that we included where, that life is something that happens while you are busy making other plans. And we plan so many times for things in our life. We plan for vacations that we may go on. We plan when we might want to make a big purchase, a purchase of a home, something to that effect. Planning for these other aspects of your life are just as important, and taking a look at how your health, how the legal concerns, how choices around your lifestyle and retirement issues, and how looking at housing, the community that you're in, and the social network that you have for support really play into this whole issue of successfully aging. And Carol, you and we're going to go jump back and forth with each other. So by all means, anything that you may have to add before I move forward with the wheel.
Oh, great. Let's get started.
Terrific. So Carol, tell us about this. This is a fantastic approach, I think, that you have to the aging process.
Well, thank you, Kathleen. I appreciate that. As I looked back on as a family caregiver, and I was starting to plan for my own life, I looked at the top issues that my parents faced. And I was in the senior care business even back then. This was around 2007 and 8. And these were some of the issues that all adults face, not just my parents, of course. But for me, I knew that I selected the top 8 because I knew that I didn't want to get overwhelmed. And my first concern was my health. And then social connections, because if I am living alone, I needed my health to be the top, really to be in tip-top shape, as best as it could be. And then, of course, my social connections, as well as my support right where I live. I didn't want to have, I knew I didn't need social connections and support that lived 15 miles away from me. I wanted something, or people, I should say, closer to me than that. And of course, so I looked at the different ways of how I could create it. And then my location, I was living in the suburbs at the time. I was very car dependent, and that really didn't satisfy me. As the older I would get, I knew that might get in my way because my parents had trouble driving and they lived in a rural community. So they depended on their daughters to drive them around. So I looked at my location. My exercise is really part of my health. And then the transportation options of where I lived, how much money, and of course my legal matters were part of that strategy. And I knew that I needed a certain amount of money to put in place so that I could pay for my health care and all of the ancillary type issues that I might face later on. And then, of course, housing and keeping that affordable.
And Carol, with this wheel I see you have this 1 to 10 scale on this. Is this something that people can use as a tool for themselves in kind of evaluating these different areas as we go forward?
Well, thank you, Kathleen. That's the most important part of this assessment. Actually have created an assessment where I ask questions that allow a person to do their own assessment or their own evaluation of the level of satisfaction where they are with each aspect of this life domain circle. For example, I'll just use myself. In my health situation, I rated my health, it was a 7, and then my money was a 4. So I ask questions. I'll either do that in our group coaching, or I even have an assessment that I am working on to offer to individuals, where a person can do it themselves on their own time and really get a full idea of where they are happy or most satisfied and where they lack satisfaction and the things. So it really gives you it gives you a prompt in thinking, well, where do I start first? Because aging can be so huge and so many challenges that we have to deal with. So this assessment really gives you a starting point of what is working and what's not working. And then you want to focus on the things that aren't working.
I love that. And so we're going to go ahead and talk about some of these different sections and the things that you all can think about as you are evaluating where you are on this type of the wheel, on where you are in terms of your level of satisfaction. So why don't we start with, Carol, you had said the healthcare issues, and I think for many of us that is a major concern. And it is doing an evaluation of how satisfied you are in terms of your health and healthcare issues. So first of all, one thing to remember, it's never too late to begin to focus on health. No matter where we may be in terms of the spectrum of our own health issues, it's never too late to begin to take a look at what you might be able to do to at least maintain your current health level if you are satisfied with it, or potentially even look to improve it. So you really want to take, as Carol said, stock in where you are, how satisfied are you with your current health level, and what can you possibly do to improve it.
I just want to interject here and remember to do this with your physician, your doctor, because I had no clue. If I had not taken all of my medical tests, my preventative type tests, my blood tests, I would have no idea of what chronic issues that I might be facing. So in conjunction of working with my doctor, we first studied my family medical history. And then from there, my doctor and a dietitian put together a plan for me. So I don't want you to think that you can do this all on your own, because you really need the feedback and advice from your doctor.
I think that's so true. Absolutely. And Carol, as you said, really making sure you've established a relationship with a primary care physician. That, that's something that some of us are lacking, is that we don't have that relationship in place. So that really needs to be done. Make sure that you've got your healthcare team identified and you've got a relationship with these people. And as you said, Carol, get to know what your healthcare needs are. Have those honest and thoughtful conversations and about where things truly are for you. So that, because sometimes, there are those of us who either tend to, understate or overstate where we may be health-wise. And so having that relationship with your physician and having that input is critical, absolutely critical.
That's right.
I'm going to talk more about the healthcare wishes in a moment in terms of looking at the legal documents that need to be in place, but the legal documents are only part of it. Really, you need to understand what's important to you in terms of healthcare, and potentially, if you were not in a position of being able to control your own healthcare decisions, that you have established who will step into your shoes to do that, and what the parameters are that you want this person to make decisions under. And so that really takes some thinking about, again, what's important to you in terms of healthcare, and what potentially are healthcare decisions that you would want to have made on your behalf should you not be able to do that yourself.
Very critical. Very critical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And understanding your insurance, take this time by all means to understand what you currently have for healthcare insurance. Are you under a private healthcare insurance plan still? Are you under Medicare and or a Medicaid type program? And understanding what those programs cover. Because, you don't want to be surprised. As you said, Carol, you also have that financial piece, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. Understanding what your healthcare does and does not provide for you is critical, so that you're not caught off guard, or that you can do some planning ahead of time for how you might cover any shortfalls in that coverage. So some things to think about as you're looking at your satisfaction level in terms of healthcare issues is really doing an assessment yourself with your healthcare providers about where things are and what you might be able to start putting in place to improve that. So Carol, if you want to talk a little bit about how one of the things that you use as a tool to kind of evaluate health.
Sure. And audience, if you can recall, I had that circle rating between 1 and 10. Just remember when you look at these factors, for example, you're going to ask yourself a question, how satisfied am I with? And then you're going to rate these answers between 1 and 10, 1 being the least satisfied and 10 being, wow, it's working. I don't need to do anything about it. So the first thing to look at is your family medical history. And are there any red flags like chronic diseases, Alzheimer's disease, anything that might kind of prompt your thinking for discussion with your physician on how to delay a chronic illness potentially, and the things to do to either delay it or avoid it altogether. And that discussion you have with your physician. Look at your body weight. Another thing that you can discuss with your physician. And however, are you satisfied with it or are you dissatisfied? So rate that. As you're looking at the wheel, you're going to rate all of these factors together, right? So because you only have one aspect in the health, but all together they will give you a bigger picture if you're dissatisfied or satisfied. Another thing is your chronic diseases, and are you managing them well? And if you're not, that's another thing to either do research on, get advice from your doctor on where to go to get more help in managing your disease or your illness. Look at your blood test and your medical screenings. What are they telling you? Are you satisfied? Is there something you can do to make improvements there? For me, I had high cholesterol, for example. And with my doctor and the recommendation of a dietitian, we reviewed my diet, the foods that I ate. And so with that in mind, I was able to lower my cholesterol. And then look at your nutrition, your diet and daily care. I'm sorry. So altogether, it's going to give you a real clear picture of if you're satisfied or dissatisfied. And that way, you know where you are, what's working, what's not.
Right. I was going to say, Carol, perfect. It's really a tool to help you do an assessment here and then come up with, again, as part of your life plan, what you're going to do to address these different issues where you see some shortfalls or where you see a desire for improvement. And the other nice thing I love about your tool, Carol, is it can be used too as a measuring guide. You know, possibly it's something that you don't look at just once, but that you review to see where improvements might be happening, or if things are starting to slip somewhere in terms of what you want for your overall life plan and the quality of that life.
That's right. As a matter of fact, during the pandemic, I slipped and I started gaining weight, which a lot of us probably did. But anyway, that was something I had to pay attention to.
Right, exactly.
There is a question in the chat box about, do you have suggestions on 1, handling mental health components of care, 2, concierge versus regular PCP, and 3, other resources one can put in place for healthcare advocacy? I know that's a big question.
That's a big question.
Yeah.
That's right.
So certainly, I mean, and mental health concerns, physical, mental health, these are all critical healthcare issues. And, mental health issues have, thank goodness, started to get the attention that they deserve. Yeah. And so bringing forward mental health concerns that you may have with your physicians, with your team, is where I see things to be critical. It's all about the team that you have around you. And if you are experiencing mental health issues or concerns, you need to make sure that you have spoken with your healthcare providers and that you get a team in place that you feel comfortable working with.
Absolutely. And especially if you're showing or you think you're showing or having signs of dementia, I'm definitely not capable of helping you there. However, your physician can give you a referral.
And there are lots of resources out there. There are even some of the insurance companies, if you're on Medicare and you have some of maybe the senior choice plans, they do have oftentimes more resources that you can reach out to speak with them to find out what network availability there may be for other individuals, not even just physicians, but there are oftentimes other types of services that are covered too. Some of the non-traditional medical services that may be covered either by your insurance or that you should seek out in your own community if you have the resources to pay privately for. Again, it is about, number one, identifying this as a concern for you. Again, with Carol's wheel, that this is an area that you feel needs to have improvement, and then looking to find the resources to really support the goals that you have in terms of maybe improvement in that area or feeling like you have control over that area some more. I'm sorry, go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that, because I want everyone to feel that you're empowered to do this for yourself, because there are so many resources. And when I talk about my assessment and give you the tools to kind of think through where you're falling, where you need improvement, and then take those, you really have the resources online that can guide you, because that's what I used. I went directly online and started doing research and started Googling everything that I was concerned about. And that was 10 years ago. So you can imagine what's available today. And if you have any questions, just feel free to email me and I'll give that out later.
Wonderful. Just with our time constraints, I am going to go ahead and get moving with the presentation because we have a lot of information to share here. And I do want to make sure that we cover it. So why don't I just talk quickly about the legal documents that you need to make sure you have in place. And this will vary from state to state, depending on where you live. But here in Massachusetts, we have specifically what we call a healthcare proxy. In other areas of the country, it may be called healthcare advance directives or some kind of a healthcare power of attorney. But what's critical here is that you get in place some kind of legal documentation in which you are appointing somebody of your choosing to be able to step into your shoes should you not be able to make healthcare decisions for yourself because of either incapacitation or incompetence. And this is a way of your maintaining control over who's going to have that decision-making power for you should you not be able to do it yourself. One of the critical things we find here in Massachusetts is that you need to make sure that you have a conversation with whoever you've asked to be in this position for you, because you want to give them a framework to have them understand what's important to you. You don't want them making decisions based on what they think is right, but what would you want to do if you could? Carol, I don't know if you have some more to add to that aspect of it.
Yes, there is a wonderful toolkit that the American Bar Association created for these types of issues. And as a matter of fact, I just did on my YouTube channel. It's called Soloing Smart. I just did a video on the toolkit talking about it, and then giving the link to that PDF that the American Bar Association created in the description of that video.
Fantastic.
It's a great toolkit.
It is. It's a really helpful one. So one of the other things that Carol had talked about in terms of the wheel, and these things don't line up exactly, but this is encompassing of a couple of different areas, looking at your work life and potential for retirement. And these can be huge life-changing events for someone that you really want to plan for ahead of time. You know, if you want to start planning for retirement early. When I wrote plan early for retirement, I didn't mean retire early unless you can, but you want to begin the planning process for what retirement would look like if retirement is part of your overall plan. For some people, retiring is not. They would like to stay active in some kind of a work situation for as long as possible, and that's great. But whether, you know, retirement, we don't want it to be a surprise for us. We really want to begin planning for it, looking at what would retirement look like for you? What would be an ideal situation if you were able to retire, and how would that unfold? How would you look to use the skills that you may want to take from possibly your previous work life, bring those forward? Or maybe retirement is for you an opportunity to absolutely begin again and to start looking and exploring other areas that may be of interest to you. It's important to remember that retirement, as with any change, can be seen as a loss in some circumstances, and you want to be prepared for that. How are you going to really recognize and maybe deal with this loss, and what is it you're going to do as you move forward? Carol, I don't know if you have some things to add in terms of retirement and how that might look for people and things they should think about.
The most important thing that, and even you mentioned, Kathleen, which I think is wonderful, is just if you retire and not work, you don't have to work. I really encourage people to find a purpose. And that does not have to be saving the world. It doesn't have to be saving people. Just something that gets you up and out of bed every morning, gives you a reason to get out of bed, period. As simple, you could even teach young children to read at the library, for example, is a wonderful life purpose.
Absolutely.
But just find something that really lights your fire.
Yep, exactly. And use this as an opportunity to really, as you said, figure out what it's going to be that gets you out of bed in the morning. That's critical for all of us, no matter what stage we're at in our lives. And oftentimes along with the work life and retirement does come the whole financial picture. And really, again, understanding your finances, potentially working with a professional, much like a physician who can give you an honest assessment as to where things are at. We oftentimes need that from someone in the financial area too, to be able to help us to figure out where are we financially. How far will our current finances take us? Do we have some kind of holes in our financial situation that we might be able to address and deal with?
That's right.
So in connection with the whole financial aspect of things is the legal documentation around getting a durable power of attorney in place. A durable power of attorney is a document that allows you to name somebody who you have full faith in, who will manage your all aspects of your life usually, but healthcare should you become incompetent or incapacitated. So getting that again in place ahead of time and identifying the person or people who you feel most comfortable with allows you to control who would be in that position should you not be able to manage things for yourself. It's critical that you think about it ahead of time and you don't leave it up to chance that if you can't manage your own affairs, that somebody, and sometimes it becomes a total stranger who might be appointed by a court, steps into your shoes and takes over your financial life. This lets you control who's going to be in that position for you.
The one comment I just want to add to that is Dr. Bill Thomas, who is a geriatrician, and he's worked in several nursing homes up in Massachusetts. He is a wonderful geriatrician. And he once told me, he said, Carol, above everything else, you don't want a stranger taking care of you or making decisions for you.
Right? Because they don't know you. They don't know what's important to you. They don't have, again, that history and framework that you've been able to provide them to guide them through decisions that may need to be made. And that's just critical to ensure that your quality of life, your dignity ends up being respected through all of this. Absolutely. So again, taking a look at Carol's wheel that she has, considering this overall concern of lifestyle issues and thinking about how these issues play into the aging process. A lot of us, as we age, do have concerns around loss of physical ability, whether that's just slow, the aches and pains, joints are starting to bother. How do we start to counter that or be able to maintain what we currently have? Mental acuity, Carol, you mentioned issues of dementia. Again, there are some things that we can control and things that we can't, but beginning to take a look at where we are and what we might be able to do to help either maintain or support any kind of improvement in these areas moving forward is critical. And understanding too that if you are dealing with changes in mental status, you are dealing, let's say, with issues around dementia concerns or changes in physical status, understanding more how that progression may look and what you can do to help maintain yourself if that's part of your goal in your current living situation, or to begin to use this time to think about what next step would be acceptable to you and what would that next step look like is critical, absolutely critical.
I have a question that came up. Who do you recommend people who are completely alone use for these matters? And I'm guessing that's for the healthcare matters and power of attorney matters.
So that's going to be very different depending on where you live. But I think from my perspective, what I believe one needs to do is create the relationship. So this is where you need to create a relationship with an attorney who you feel comfortable dealing with, to create a relationship with healthcare providers who you feel comfortable dealing with. It is about developing, as we said, that village, creating your relationships with people so that you do have trusted advisors who you can turn to and talk through these issues with. Carol, I don't know.
Yes, I do. I have one recommendation, and it's an agency. It's called the Area Agency on Aging. It is a federally funded agency that is really throughout the nation. They are located in every county throughout all the states. So if you just go to Google and type in Area Agency on Aging, blank, your city. Like I live in Dallas, it would be Area Agency on Aging, Dallas. And that is a wonderful resource that will help you get started, because many times they have online as well as in-person seminars and webinars with professionals like elder law attorneys, financial advisors, healthcare professionals who can give you not only advice, but also offer services at a lower cost through that particular area agency.
Carol, that's a fantastic suggestion. I know in Massachusetts, we call them ASAPs. They're senior access points. Again, you're right, they do usually serve a catchment area, and they typically serve seniors as well as disabled individuals within their catchment area. Another place that I've seen some great resources are on councils on aging in the different towns, and they can have a world of resources to reach for. And oftentimes some of the towns and city halls can also be a place to begin to reach out for possible resources in your area.
That's right. Exactly. Thank you.
So looking again, it's all about assessing where you are and putting to, also where you want to be and beginning to create that network, beginning to reach out and understand the resources that are there. One of the ASAPs that are that's in the area here in Massachusetts, I know one of their mottos was get to know us before you need us. And I think that's critical. Get to know what's out there in your area. What will support your staying at home if that's what you want? If that's not possible or not what you want, what does the next step look like? What would be acceptable to you in terms of, let's say, a living community? So get to know what's out there for you. Carol, this is one of yours talking about functional status and how that plays into things. I think this one's yours.
No, actually it isn't.
Maybe this is ours. My apologies, Carol. I thought this was one of yours. So I know when, again, when looking at lifestyle issues, evaluating where you are from a functional standpoint, we are in a little bit more of a rural community for most of the communities that I deal with. And so people live oftentimes in, single family homes. Is this a realistic place to live, for instance? Can you do the stairs safely where you currently are? Do you have to go down into the basement, which is so typical here in Massachusetts, down into the basement to do your laundry, and yet your bedroom's up, let's say, on a second floor? Being able to take, I think, a very clear assessment of where your functional status is, the things that you can and can't do. And again, looking at, can you improve or maintain those that functional status, and how does that happen? And if you can't, if you are going to need, let's say that you're dealing with a progressive disease that's going to begin to limit your mobility. What does that do in terms of an impact on where you're living, how you're going to reach out to resources and get help when you need it, how you're going to get your groceries and get to doctor's appointments? So doing an assessment as to where you're functionally at now and how that impacts your really ability to be able to reach out for services that you may be able to need in the future.
This is a really good educational slide. As a matter of fact, this is where I was back 5 years ago before I moved. And because I lived in a single family residence, it was 2-story. And I started questioning, I'm 65, do I really want to continue walking up these stairs? Because my washer and dryer were upstairs. Do I really want to be in a place where I'm forced to drive to run an errand or see my doctor? So I love this slide, by the way. It's great. It's very useful.
I'm glad that we had that one in there. So
yes, very much.
Excellent. And that really leads into the question about looking at, your housing, your community as a whole. And again, thinking about, does your current living situation, how is that working based on your functional status now, and what may become your functional status as you move forward? And if your decision is to stay, let's say, in your own primary home, then you want to take a look and figure out, are there changes that need to be made to that home to make it easier for you? Things like even making it easier to open doors, maybe not having handles on doors, but having the flip handles can make it easier. Making sure grab bars are in the bathroom and that there's safety issues being addressed. Decluttering the house can all be things that you can do now that will help to potentially extend your ability to stay where you are. Making sure that you identify how you will get to doctor's appointments, how you will handle getting groceries, and having food made for you if necessary is critical as well. And then, as Carol, what you did, maybe saying living where I am now is not either what is going to work for me or what I want. And what's the next step look like? So Carol, what was that for you in terms of going through kind of that thinking process?
At first, it was a little scary because I thought, gosh, that's huge. Reevaluating where I am right now, that might mean that I move. It might mean I sell my home, move to another location. So initially, it was pretty scary. However, once I started doing the research and looking at my preferences, because when you do an assessment, you're not so much looking at where you're failing and what's wrong with my life, but more of what is my dream? How do I want to live when I'm 5 years down the road or 3 years down the road? This is really meant to be an empowerment tool. So once I started assessing where I was and what is my dream? How do I want to live out the rest or as many years as I can in an environment where I'm thriving? What does that mean to me exactly? So the clearer I became of what that looked like and what are some of the things that would help me thrive, like not have to drive so much, like walk my errands, like walk out the front door of my apartment or my condo, and I have access to neighbors and friends immediately. I don't have to drive anywhere. So it all started right here in my mind and in my heart. What is it how did I want to imagine my life? So once you start doing that, things really start opening up.
What a great way to think about it, that it's an empowering move, not looking at what's missing or what, are the issues as much as what is it that I want.
Absolutely.
And
it
Carol,
has to be.
That brings us into your whole,
Yes.
your assessment that you do here for this.
That's right. Thank you. And so and then housing, because housing for all of us is so important. First of all, is it affordable? Can we maintain? What about the maintenance? Can you keep our upkeep with the home? Can you do the landscaping? Those are all things that you need to consider around where you live right now. And is it satisfying to you? Can you see yourself maintaining your yard or your home, a big home, for say 5 years from now? Your living conditions, think about what living conditions do I want? Do I want to have to be forced to drive? To either shop or to be near my friends or to meet someone for lunch or to drive to a senior center or what have you? So those are some of the living conditions. Is it affordable? Will you be able to maintain it? Look at your location. Do you have easy access to healthcare, to your medical professionals, to grocery shopping? Or do you live in a food desert? Do you have to drive 10, 15 miles to go shopping? The expenses of your home, that's another thing. I mean, things are so expensive these days. And is your home in a location where you have access to friends or at least easy access to engagement, like with senior centers, if that's where you choose to develop relationships, or even to your faith organization, which is a wonderful place to meet individuals or peers like yourself.
Yeah, I just advanced it too, because you were really starting to go on the importance of the social connections too.
Yes. So, for the person on this call, I don't remember her name, and I don't think anyway, if you feel alone, there are so many things that you can do to start feeling empowered. First off, you could join my Facebook group called Elder Orphans if you're on Facebook. Now, if you're not, then reach out to the senior centers. It's a wonderful resource for starting to engage or become engaged with other peers. Even your faith organization. You may not be a churchgoer. although it's a great place to start building relationships because they have many activities that feed the soul along with feeding your social engagement type of activities. And another thing that I'd like to really encourage people to do is to look around right where you live. Our neighbors are such a wonderful resource for us to connect with, where we can give support to them and receive it back. Many times we don't reach out to our neighbors. We don't have any type of, maybe we don't even meet with our neighbors to have coffee. That was me in where I lived in the suburbs. So I had to look at that long and hard, but I do know that there are so many ways that we can connect with neighbors right now. It's simply just getting out of our houses and not being isolated and starting to just say hello to the people next door, and perhaps even bringing cookies over if that's what you choose to do. But there are so many ways that we can start engaging. As a matter of fact, there was a woman in one of my groups. She actively pursued building relationships with her neighbors. And what she did, she started knocking on the doors and saying, "This is who I am. I'm aging alone. Let's, if you would like to be on my call list, let's check in on each other. Just even if it's once a week, let's just say hello to each other." So she started taking names and numbers and built her own little network phone list. So it was so good to hear her story. And now they do things together. They actually have barbecues outside and share meals. And it was very exciting to hear. So those are the things that we can do. It just takes action, right? And I know it's hard to do. Believe me, I had to force myself to start talking to people. However, once I did, it started getting a lot easier. And so I encourage you to do that.
And Carol, you talked about the importance of connection. And I think it is critical in terms of building your own village. It's looking at where are the areas of improvement based on your own level of satisfaction, and then how can you reach out to begin to build on and improve those areas. But of course, in today's day, we are dealing with COVID, which has added a whole kind of new layer onto everything. And so we didn't want to end the presentation without at least acknowledging the fact that this has been an extremely difficult year and a half. And as everyone knows, we're not really out of the woods yet. We don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 months to a year. Hopefully we're going to see, we'll have improvement and be able to continue to be out and connecting. But it's been very isolating for many, many people. And so I think the things that Carol has talked about in terms of being able to reach out on some of those different resources, even though you may not physically be able to go, let's say, to the Council on Aging or even to the aging access points, being able to still reach out to these organizations, find out what they have to help build connections, because it is a focus that many of them are doing right now. And getting yourself maybe out of your comfort zone a little bit, making sure you understand how to use Zoom, going on Facebook, connecting with some of the neighborhoods, the groups that may be there are critical. And one of the things too that we have seen, is setting up possibly a buddy system. Kind of, you described a little bit of it, Carol, reaching out to people to make a plan with someone to check in on you, and maybe that you check in on them just to be sure that they're doing okay. And so this COVID environment has really impacted things. Yes.
And just to add to that check-in system, if you can with your neighbors, that's a wonderful thing. However, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, reach out to your senior center. They have volunteers. So does the Area Agency on Aging, has volunteers that can help you build your own check-in system and support system.
Absolutely. So I know we're getting pretty close to the end of the hour. We do want to leave time for questions, but do want to leave you all hopefully with some action items that you can use, really taking a good look at these different areas that we've talked about, figuring out your level of satisfaction in these areas, and then begin to identify where you can build on that and really help to hopefully improve your level of satisfaction as you go forward. And really, it's about the village, it's about the network and establishing that network and utilizing that network. Well,
Right.
thank you all. Carol, thank you so much for spending this hour with us, and everyone for giving us your time today. And we wish you much success. We are here and we have these resources available for you.
Wonderful. Thank you all for joining us today.
Bye now.